Welcome, everyone, to A Mexican Crossing Lines with your hosts, Cindy Gomez-Schempp
and Duke Gomez-Schempp.
You're listening to 88.1 FM, KPPPLP Fargo Moorhead, where we are adding local color to your airwaves. And tonight, I am bringing you a very important and hopefully informative show on the complicated history of the LeBaron family in Mexico, primarily in Mexico. The reason for this show is people in the United States do not, in many cases, understand Spanish language television news and have limited access to the information about the history, both recent and past, of the LeBaron family, not just as Mormons, not just as ranchers, but as activists, as politicians, and how this informs the government response, the media response, the community response to what has happened, the latest tragedy that has befallen the LeBaron family in Mexico. And a lot of people don't understand. There's a lot of outrage and pain, understandably so, at the loss of life that seems to have no answers, no reason to it, no rhyme or reason to it. It is an unspeakable horror what has befallen this family, who have members of their family in Williston, North Dakota. They recently laid to rest some of their family members in Mexico, in La Mora, and there are already investigations underway to try to find the assailants and bring them to justice. But in order to have a good understanding, a clear understanding, not only of this investigation, but of what some of the family spokespeople like Alejandro LeBaron and Julian LeBaron are saying, and what the reactions are to this family, and in particular those two members of the family as leaders, as figureheads, as spokespeople, as activists, and as politicians in Mexico. We have to dig deeper. In order to really understand everything, we have to do a better investigation and research into the LeBaron family. Tonight, I'm going to be bringing you a lot of what we found. So thank you for being with us. Please bear with us. We're going to try to educate folks and to be as sensitive as we possibly can to a family that is currently going through one of the most horrific, unimaginable, unspeakable tragedies that anybody could go through. And thank you for being with us tonight. Thank you for so many of you that reached out, that sent us information, that had questions. And for all of you who support our work here at this low-power FM non-commercial station in the Fargo-Moorhead region, thank you for your messages. I will say we're having an issue with our voicemail right now. We have to correct that issue. We are in the process of correcting that issue. But in the meantime, we don't have access to the
voice messages.
The voice messages from our radio station call-in line. So it may take us a while to get back to you.
Yeah.
And we do appreciate your messages. You can also reach us many other ways.
That's right. Lots of ways. And it's the voicemail is one thing, and it might change. The number might change. Sorry about that. But in the meantime, many ways to get a hold of us. You can get a hold of Cindy at an email, cindy@kpppfm.com, or me, Duke, at kpppfm.com. And also, I really appreciate people who have supported us over the years, and we've been doing this for years now. And there's one individual that sends us a donation every month, handwritten card. Thank you so much. You've never given me permission to say your name, but you know who you are, and we thank you greatly. And we thank the other people who have made donations to us. If you'd like to make a donation, go to kpppfm.com, go to the Donate tab, and make a tax-deductible donation. Because remember, we're a non-profit, non-commercial, community-run radio station in Fargo-Moorhead. And your donation dollars help us stay on the air. It helps us afford the monthly bills we have to be able to broadcast. We do Facebook Lives. We do YouTube chats. We are on YouTube at Duke1517, and on Facebook, of course, where you are now. Also on Facebook, we also have 88. We actually have the People's Press Project, the Mexi-Can. And those are a couple ways to get a hold of us. And also, if you go to our website, kpppfm.com, every story we put up, every show we put up, has a comment section at the bottom. So you can always make comments. Same thing on YouTube. There's been people who have been making pretty much comments on every show, because this show, once this is done, we will upload it to YouTube. And also, it depends how the show goes. It's probably going to air on Monday, the radio version, which will be edited from the actual production version we're doing tonight. And that'll be heard on the FM airwaves at 7 o'clock on Monday night. Now, also, when you're at kpppfm.com, we have a section for people that run businesses. It's called underwriting. The FCC allows us to be able to get donations and get their name on the air for them sponsoring what we do. We have a new underwriter that we'd like to announce, and it is Make My Life Great Again, PalomaForTrump.com. Paloma, the number 4, Trump.com. Make My Life Great Again. Now, if you would like to do an underwriting donation, just go to kpppfm.com, have a look over the information there, and you can have your announcement put on the air, and you make a tax-deductible donation to us, but what you get back is you get your business promoted as someone who actually donated and supported a nonprofit community-run radio station. So that's very important, very useful. Also, individual donations. I've asked people when they agree that we run a spot on our radio station that says Donors of the Week. So if you make a donation, we'll mention your name, and close to 165,000 people in this area might hear your name that you made a contribution to our organization for our radio station. We appreciate you, and this is going to be a great show tonight. Get out your Duolingo, get out your Spanish dictionary. There's a lot to learn in the show, but Cindy's going to provide us with ways, with the translations of things so we can understand. I look forward to it.
There is a lot of anxiety, animosity, anger, frustration in both countries, on both sides of the border, in response to the massacres of the LeBaron family. From the LeBaron family's perspective, their family has not been given the adequate protection. Their family, the government has not given an adequate rapid response. They have not given adequate investigation, support, etc. Therefore, they have reached out to the FBI, to the U.S. president. They're asking for support to investigate this crime that occurred in Mexico. Mexico, therefore, is something we should seek to understand. In order to understand the complexity of this story and how it plays out in Mexico, we need to understand the lay of the land. Let us remember that cartel crime, cartel violence, and what is happening with organized crime in Mexico did not start today. It did not start in a vacuum, and it did not start today. It has been going on for a very, very long time. And it has a nexus in different cartels, in different territories, and in different states. This is not just the problem of a government, one government, AMLO's government. This is the problem of a number of different municipalities, states, governors, etc., of a lot of the people in Mexico, including, by the way, according to one of the LeBaron spokespeople, the apathy of every single Mexican. The cowardice of every single Mexican. So, the way in which this response, whatever it may be, with the support or without the support of the United States, in order to understand how that's going to play out, why that's going to play out the way it does, we need to understand how people on both sides of the border see this issue, and we need to understand how the LeBaron family is known and seen in Mexico for who and what they have done and represented as politicians, as activists, etc. Many people don't know that history, so I'm going to try to bring some of that history to you tonight. These are videos that are already circulating in Mexican media, and many of you have also brought to my attention what is going on with the history of the LeBaron family. Let's listen to one of the videos that is being shared in the media, giving us a brief rundown of the history of the LeBarons in Mexico.
Aunque todos reconocen que fue una tragedia,
although everyone recognizes that this was a tragedy,
muchos hablan del pasado de los LeBaron. ¿Por qué?
many people speak about the history or the past of the LeBaron family. Why?
En septiembre de 1992, Los
On September of 1992, the Los Angeles
Times publicó que la historia de los LeBaron en México comenzó con el patriarca Alma Dare, a quien
The Los Angeles Times published that the family of the LeBarons began with Alma Dyer, Mr. Dyer.
un día Dios le dijo que se separara de la iglesia mormona y junto con su familia fundara su propia iglesia, donde se les
Saying that one day God appeared to him and told him to take his family, separate themselves from the Mormon church, and go to Mexico to establish their own colony
permitiera practicar la poligamia.
so that they could continue practicing polygamy.
Y en 1924 se estableció con sus 10 hijos en el
In 1924, he established himself with his 10 kids
norte de México.
in the northern part of Mexico.
Ervin LeBaron fue acusado de ser líder de un culto secreto en el
Irvin LeBaron was accused of being the head of a secret cult
cual por orden divina mató a más de 30 personas.
who by divine order murdered more than 30 people.
Uno de ellos, su hermano Joel.
One of them was his brother Joel.
Y aunque se presume que hubo más víctimas, nunca se encontraron más cuerpos.
And although they assumed there were more victims, they never found any more bodies.
Ervil fue perseguido y en 1977 fue procesado en Estados Unidos
Ervil was persecuted or sought after, and oh my gosh, I forgot the year. It sounds like it was 1979. Was convicted in U.S. courts
por el asesinato de un líder rival.
for murdering a rival leader.
Murió en prisión, pero su secta siguió viva.
He died in prison, but his cult remained alive.
Tanto así que en 1992 la
So much so that in 1992, the DA's office for
Fiscalía de Houston vinculó 4 asesinatos con los
the city of Houston found 4 more deaths connected to the cult.
servilistas. De hecho, ese mismo año encarcelaron a 6 miembros de la secta, sin
In fact, that same year, they imprisoned 6 members of the cult without bail.
derecho a fianza. Las autoridades de Phoenix y el especialista en el caso, Dick
The authorities of Phoenix and the specialist in the case, Dick
Forbes, aseguran que el clan obtenía dinero robando vehículos, que
stated that the clan made money by selling stolen cars,
luego vendían en México. Pero además
the stolen cars that they later sold in Mexico.
sospechan que también estaban inmiscuidos en el tráfico de drogas.
They also suspect that they were involved in drug trafficking.
Una ex esposa de Ervil, que se separó del grupo y que permanece
An ex-wife of Ervil that separated herself from the cult
escondida, dice en su libro,
and who continues to live in hiding, said in her book, The Blood Covenant,
Rancho de México es un verdadero semillero de odio y actividad.
the ranch in Mexico is a seeding ground for hate
Ilegales. Se
and illegal activities,
presume que es un arsenal de armas y que de
and it is also an arsenal for weapons.
ahí se mueve el negocio de venta de autos robados.
And that's where they move their stolen vehicles from.
De acuerdo con Forbes, en 1989,
In 1989, Mr. Forbes, the DA of Houston, stated that
6 de los hijos más jóvenes de Ervil escaparon para después reunirse en México
escaped and then reunited in Mexico
y continuar con la secta.
and continued the cult.
Se dice que el rancho La Joya, ubicado cerca de Chihuahua, es un lugar sagrado para la familia.
They say that La Jolla Ranch in Chihuahua is considered to be a holy land for the family.
Y es que Ervil decía que cuando Cristo regrese, allí es donde se va a aparecer.
And that's because Ervil said that when Jesus returned in his second coming, that's where he would appear.
Hoy en día se dice que la iglesia de Ervil ya no existe,
Today it is said that Ervil's cult no longer exists,
pero la que fundó su hermano Joel sí continúa.
but the one that was founded by his brother Joel does continue.
Ellos no han abandonado ese lugar. y al parecer las tragedias no los han abandonado a ellos.
They have not abandoned that location, and it appears that tragedies have not abandoned them. So as I've said, this family goes back a long, long time. There are thousands and thousands of members of the LeBaron family living in Mexico. And they're a very tight-knit community, banding together, pooling their resources. One of the reasons that they are targets of attack is because they have become prosperous. They have a lot of resources in their Mormon communities, in their enclaves. They have very nice homes. Of course, the more well-to-do neighborhoods, wherever they may be in Mexico, are going to be targets of theft, of grift, because it is a poor country. So that alone makes them more of a target.
Yeah, they're living in a third world country, and they are amassing wealth and stability and material possessions, and living like they're in a first class world, So it's very interesting that they've lived there. Their family's been there for decades and decades and decades.
100 years.
100 years.
Julian said their family's been there for over 100 years,
wow.
And they talk about this as being very sacred territory to them for both religious and personal family reasons. And remember when we were watching that Vice history that I recommended y'all look up on YouTube about them, I told you that there's a road, the road on which these families were attacked. There's a very important corridor for traffickers. This is something that is well known in that area. And so another reason why this is a dangerous place and a dangerous area is because this corridor through this area exists. And there are other reasons, perhaps. Some of the people commenting on the recent video interview of Julian LeBaron, one of the family's current spokespersons, and who has been a very open activist in Mexico for the rights of victims of organized crime and cartels. People in Mexico brought up these various reasons that they allege the family faces retaliation. In this post to Diario Noticias, one commenter says, you have to read a little bit more in order to learn. I do not justify for any reason the deaths of these innocent women and children. Those delinquents who attacked them are very cowardly. But the leader of these Mormons, Joel LeBaron Soto, and a number of his children, like Benjamin, who was executed by narcos, meaning cartels, members of the cartel, in 2008. But the word por narco could be by narco or because he is a narco. So it's kind of ambiguous, the translation. And the so-called activist Julian LeBaron and his and also the brother of Joel LeBaron, Daniel LeBaron, who was also executed by narcos or for narco trafficking. It is it has been known who was killed, also executed by narco traffickers some years back in Sonora. It has been known about them for decades that they dedicate themselves to narco trafficking. A lot of people know about this. So, there is one of the allegations that have been made. I kind of curated, I went through lots of different news stories and checked on the comments that were being made by a lot of people, and especially people that are local to the area. And I wanted to curate samples of the kinds of things people were saying. One of those was that the family was involved themselves in narco trafficking. So that is one of the comments that I used to illustrate. Another talks more in depth about the Joel LeBaron and his sons and what they have been involved in. And it is a continuation of the post that we just read, in which it says that a lot of people know that. So this is the continuation of that post. A lot of people know that they dedicated themselves to narco trafficking in the municipalities of Buenaventura and Galeana, as well as LeBaron. And on top of that, on top of committing a lot of abuses against humble people, such as taking their lands, exploitation of aquifer wells, of clandestine aquifer wells that hurt hundreds and hundreds of farmers. Even their mother, the mother of the ex-legislator Alex LeBaron Gonzalez, Mrs. Maria Gonzalez, was detained, was in jail for trafficking of drugs in the Cerezo in Ciudad Juarez from 2002 to approximately 2011. And from 2009, they have had bodyguards from the federal police, about 50 agents worth, and 12 units, armed units, that were given to them by the federal government, with which they commit an infinity of shenanigans, such as beating people, disarming people disarming the municipal police of Galeana whenever they want, those of LeBaron, and even beating municipal police. In fact, in the municipality of Galeana, the LeBaron family is known as the Cartel of Galeana, and they are repudiated by many. 3 years ago, Joel LeBaron was accused of having someone executed, a rancher by the last name of Cruz. Are you Mr. Cruz right there? Mm-hmm. You can. I just want you to put it back on the screen. I know people can't read Spanish, but I want them to see I got the goods, where I got this from. Okay. With the last name Cruz, because he was one of the few who would not put up with their arbitrary attacks. And Mr. Cruz sued Joel LeBaron one day before the lawsuit was to begin. Mr. Cruz was executed. And everyone knows that the intellectual author of that murder was Joel LeBaron Soto, etc., etc. And many more things could be brought up about this family, LeBaron. They act as overlords worthy of reports of news coverage on a national level. But since they're Americans and they have the backing of the U.S., no one will do anything, and they get away with whatever they want, as they have for decades here in Mexico.
Wow.
So, when you hear the LeBaron spokespeople in their family requesting assistance from the FBI and from the United States, and you hear angry reactions or reactions of, well, hold on, wait a minute, from Mexicans, this might be the reason why. Because I think as Americans, we're like, what? You obviously are not handling your situation over there, Mexico. Mm-hmm. Why do you not want our help?
Yeah.
What we may not understand is, and again, these are allegations made by people in Mexico against this family, although you can't verify whether or not they had this Cruz guy murdered, or whether or not they've beaten police. I do, and the Vice video shows that there is evidence that they stop police, question authorities, and I wouldn't be surprised if they disarmed or made authorities, local municipal police, stand down. I can't verify that they beat police. What I can tell you is that I've heard them say things akin to, we're armed and they're not allowed to arm themselves. They are illegally armed. You know, gun laws in Mexico are very, very strict. And although the LeBaron family argues that as many attempts on their life and as much as they have struggled to protect their family over the decades, in which many of their members of their family have been kidnapped and killed, they're not allowed to protect themselves. And this is a concern, especially for Americans who always have the ability to arm themselves, to protect themselves. It feels like there's some sort of major injustice going on. There's an American in Mexico. They're getting shot up and killed, and they're not allowed to arm themselves. So, of course, I think Americans here have a soft spot in their heart for a family that is arming themselves for self-defense purposes, especially when they run such great risk. But these other allegations that are made do raise strong questions about why people in those communities that live near them may feel that they are overprotected, that they may be given impunity in some ways to act in any way that they please. And I will show you more of these comments with regard to the protection received, federal protection received by the LeBaron family. In this post, in this excerpt from an article that I really highly recommend, I know it's in Spanish, but use Google Translate or something. And, have Google Translate tell you what this article from Aristegui News says. And your comments real quick, Duke, on what I was just reading, all of the allegations made. Well, because I want to show folks, there is definitely evidence of some of what was said in there being true.
Mm-hmm. Well, actually, one thing you said that made a lot of sense to me is that I live in a country where, pretty much you have access to weapons and guns, and our police are armed. Our National Guard is armed. The college police are armed. And in Mexico, you're not allowed to carry firearms. And yet there's, organized crime that has access to guns. And you have one corridor coming through your community, and there's people with guns. So I can see the sympathy as like, well, how come these people can't arm themselves? And it's something to really think about. But then I think about there are societies and countries in this world where there's less and less weapons. There's still danger. There's still people getting murdered and killed. But there's less violence when it comes to firearms. But it is an odd situation where you're used to being from a country and your ancestors were all based on being able to have access to guns, especially in today's talking about gun control and those sorts of things. And this family is, family members were killed and shot. And this family is also saying, how do we take our own security into our own hands? Because you can do that in the United States. We have the right to form militias, And so it does make you think, but you are in a different country. You can't just carry the culture from your one country and the policies and the laws from your country into another country unless you change those laws and change those policies and get involved to do that. They just don't happen by osmosis because you're there. So that's another thing to consider when you're actually living in another country that is totally different than the one that you might have come from or that you're dual citizenship in. There are some differences.
There definitely are a lot of differences. And in this article that I'm going to share, it goes through the history of the family. It does a really good job of covering all of that. And it's important for you to know that Julian LeBaron became a public figure after a number of members of his family died. In a TEDx talk that he did, talking about how he became a public figure, he talked about the fact that an uncle of his and also a friend of his had been murdered and he'd done nothing about it. And then his brother Eric was kidnapped and they wanted a ransom of $1 million. Wow. At that time, the family decided to come together, publicly protest the request for the ransom, and saying they would not pay it, and somehow miraculously, this Eric was released.
Wow.
And after that happened, 2 months on July 7th of 2009, armed men came and assassinated. And when I say armed, like cartel style murder, weapons and shooting out, came and assassinated Benjamin LeBaron. According to family members, around 20 men showed up. So it's a large group of people. And they threatened to kill the rest of the family unless he agreed to come with them, Benjamin. His brother, or his neighbor and friend, Louis Whitman, came over, and it's also his brother-in-law, came over because the wife inside the home called for help, and he too was taken and murdered along with Benjamin. Wow. According to the DA of the state of Chihuahua, Carlos Buterquit, who was detained. According to the DA of Chihuahua, Carlos Buterquit was detained in November of 2009, and he was the criminal that committed this crime against the family. Although at the time he was working for the cartel La Línea. Same cartel, by the way, that was recently implicated in that they arrested a person from and said he might have been involved in the current massacre.
Oh, okay.
But not the same guy, same cartel.
Yeah.
Now they have since said that guy they captured with two kidnapped people in his vehicle and weapons had nothing to do with this massacre. But back then, this Carlos Buterquit was said to have been the person involved that murdered Benjamin for personal reasons, because both of them had been business associates in the United States. And the father of Benjamin had denounced Carlos and other members of the Buterquit family for threatening them. This was according to González Rodriguez of La Jornada on December of 2009. I think it's important for people to know that distinction because a lot of misinformation out there connects Julian LeBaron's brother Eric and Benjamin and what happened to them, the kidnapping and the death, by cartels and organized crime to have been the reason why he became an activist, when, as you just learned, there were personal reasons involved having to do with business affiliations. And although he was connected to La Línea Cartel, it was not per se simply a cut and dry organized crime hit or a cartel hit as it has been portrayed. He then went on to become one of the founders of the Movement for Dignity, Justice, and Peace for Victims of Organized Crime. And this occurred right after his family members were killed, along with a poet and high-profile victim of organized crime, Javier Sicilia, whose son was murdered in Cuernavaca, Morelos, in the state of Morelos. And so Julian was part of this very, highly visible national organization for victims, which he then left, saying it had become divisive in February of 2012. But he has been known as an advocate for victims of organized crime. What is important to note from this in this excerpt, if you'll put the next slide up, in this excerpt from this article, it details that from 2009, the LeBaron colony, the sect, the town, was maintained by guards from the federal government, according to the DA from the state of Chihuahua, Cesar Peniche, and the family member Julian LeBaron. The activist confirmed to the newspaper Reforma on Tuesday that approximately 20 agents from the National Guard and 3 other units protect their community. Despite this, federal protection is only available in the municipality of Galeana and not on other properties owned by the LeBaron family, like their ranch, La Mojina, in the municipality of Buenaventura, Chihuahua, where groups from the farmers that own land in common from El Barzón community violently entered their farm in May of 2018. So, here is another issue that they have faced.
Really.
We'll talk about that coming next. So, they do have federal protection. According to LeBaron's spokesperson, Julian, one of them anyway, Julian, the main reason why that is because they denounced crimes committed by people in organized crime against his brother Benjamin and their family friend, and that is why they need protection for those witnesses, their federal witnesses. In this post, another allegation is made that LeBaron's I already talked about this, that LeBaron's, Alejandro LeBaron's mother had gone to prison for trafficking of drugs. So there again, The trafficking of drugs comes up, that allegation. And, I already read that one too. Excuse me. I'm a little bit off. Let's go to the checkpoint destruction video. In this next video, one of the comments made, which I'm about to show you, can we go to the Mexico comment on the checkpoint? Did it destroyed before we go to the video? We have a commenter talking about another allegation about the family that I was actually able to verify info on. In it, they allege that there is a checkpoint in Mexico that was destroyed by the LeBaron family for a specific reason. They had a reason why they wanted this checkpoint destroyed. It says, I don't believe the stuff they say in the government that this was the narcs, the organized crime, the cartels. Because the LeBarons are a cartel. They were the ones that destroyed a checkpoint that President Peña Nieto had constructed in this area because it is a corridor for narco traffickers. And furthermore, it has a history of theft. They have a history of murders and land theft, including the fact that videos exist where local farmers who own land in common arm themselves and confront the LeBarons. This, they fingered the LeBaron. They also fingered the LeBarons for the massacre of one family, which the LeBarons said was a narco family. But hours after that family was massacred by them, they took over their ranch and they put wells on that land to extract water.
Oh, boy.
Okay. Lots of stuff going on in that post.
Yeah.
And I wanted to just say that the checkpoint being destroyed, you have to understand that in the Constitution, the revolution in Mexico, one of the things they fought for was so that the poor people, the Mexican people with indigenous roots and ancestors who had lived on certain territories and worked those lands for generations, but did not have ownership of those lands, even though that's where they were born and raised, could own land, because the majority of the land was owned by the rich plantation owners that had basically inherited large swaths of lands and humans,
the people on it,
when they first conquered the country, right? So the revolution was supposed to return these territorial lands, these traditionally territorial lands, back to the people that worked them. But in order for those people not to be taken, or for those lands to stay in the hands of those families, they had to own them in common. And in order to sell, like they do to Native Americans, like they own the land in common, and you can't sell it without somebody. Yeah, almost like in a trust type of a thing. Yeah. So a lot of these people are very poor, ejidatarios, they're called. And I just wanted to make that distinction for people who don't understand what that means. So here's that video about the destruction of the checkpoint. Now that you have the context and the background of why it was built in the first place. Remember, this is a drug corridor. This is one of the reasons why this area is so dangerous, and why this massacre may have happened in this area because of the heightened danger of where this is. And this checkpoint was one of the places where the federal government was going to stop and check people, right? It's an internal checkpoint. Mm-hmm. We have those in our country too.
Yep.
To check for people that are going and coming in an undocumented fashion, mm-hmm. which with all of these caravans, a lot of people have been asking for, mm-hmm. because we know people and freight and weapons and drugs are moving within the country unnoticed. But the LeBaron family did not want this checkpoint, and here's why.
Reaparece públicamente y en una manifestación casi un año después de que hubiera salido del movimiento.
LeBaron appears once again in a protest almost a year after leaving the organization,
por la paz. Este fin de semana organizó
the Movement for Peace.
Junto con otras personas una manifestación contra la garita de Janos porque ellos.
Today he protests against the Janos checkpoint because
aseguran que se va a cobrar un dinero innecesario por el paso.
They assure that they're going to be charging people unnecessarily at this checkpoint
De vehículos que aproximadamente es de 2,000 al día.
For the passing of vehicles through this checkpoint, which is around 2,000 per day.
Julián LeBaron quería derribar la garita junto con sus simpatizantes, pero no.
Today, Julián LeBaron wanted to destroy the checkpoint along with his allies, but there were not
suficiente gente para apoyar esta decisión.
Enough people to support this decision.
Nuestra compañera Adriana Estela Flores viajó a Chihuahua y esta es su crónica.
Our reporter from Chihuahua tells the story.
No hay un acto más injusto económicamente para dos comunidades que ir a imponerles una aduana entre medio.
There is nothing more unjust for these two communities than for them to put this checkpoint to make money in between them.
20 años de expoliación y latrocinio de nuestras comunidades.
It's been 20 years of people taking money from our communities, taking advantage of our communities.
O sea, como me dijo un amigo, esta porquería no sirve más que para chingar y para joder.
Or as a friend of mine said, this checkpoint is nothing more than to F us over and to screw us.
Julián LeBaron convocó a poner un ultimátum al gobierno federal.
Julián LeBaron called everyone to make an ultimatum to the government.
No retiraban la garita de Janos, la gente destruiría las instalaciones contra las que la comunidad se ha opuesto los últimos.
Either get rid of this checkpoint or the people of the community would destroy it as they oppose its being there.
18 años por presunta extorsión de los agentes aduanales.
Because of the extortion for the last 18 years of the agents at the checkpoint.
LeBaron y unas 150 personas iban
LeBaron and approximately 150 people were
decididas a todo.
Sí, nosotros
were prepared to do it all.
Vamos a cerrar la entrada a esta instalación y
Julián LeBaron says to the manager there at the checkpoint, we're going to close the entrance to this checkpoint.
pedimos que por favor se vaya.
And we're asking you, please, to leave.
Lo único que se hace es actividades de autoridad.
What's going to happen here is we're going to continue under our authority.
Fiscales, aduaneras, cobro de impuestos.
Charging at this checkpoint, taxing people, and
No es la primera vez, esta es la tercera vez que la vamos a tomar.
Another person in the crowd speaking to this same checkpoint manager says, this isn't the first time that we've shut this checkpoint down. We've done it 2 other times.
Lo hicimos hace 10 años, 2 veces.
We did it 10 years ago, twice.
Y pues no pasó nada, ¿verdad?
And nothing happened. There they are trying to take the barricades down.
Ante la presencia de soldados y policías federales,
In front of federal police and military,
el paso de Janos a Nuevo Casas Grandes quedó libre, por lo que
the road to Janos was opened.
centenares de vehículos pasaron sin ser revisados.
And for that reason, hundreds of vehicles passed through the area without being checked.
Pásenle, pásenle, pásenle.
Go on through. Go on through. That's Julian. LeBaron. There are trucks going through.
Faltaba más gente para derribar la garita. Los
There weren't enough people to destroy the checkpoint.
14 alcaldes que se han opuesto a estas instalaciones, legisladores y organizaciones
The 14 mayors that are opposed to this checkpoint, along with other governors and
civiles, no llegaron.
nonprofit organizations, didn't show up.
No tenemos suficiente gente y nos van a meter a todos al bote.
We don't have enough people here and they're going to put us all in jail.
Sí, pero no vino la gente. Los convocamos a toda la gente y la gente no vino.
We asked people to come out here, but they didn't show up.
Entonces, también está cabrón.
Todos los viejos
So it's kind of screwed over.
chingones acá que andan aquí para apoyarnos están haciendo pedo y dicen vamos a parar este pedo ya en seco y vamos a jalar para hacerlo.
All of these bigwigs are supposed to be here. They're just, they say they want this to stop. So let's just stop this in its tracks and get to work.
¿Qué vamos a hacer?
Vamos a hacerlo, pues.
Come on, let's go do it.
Vamos a hacerlo.
La falta de apoyo obligó a tomar una decisión.
The lack of support forced them to make a decision.
Vamos a estacionar a todos nuestros carros aquí, de este lado, y que todo el tráfico pase libre.
We're going to park our cars here on this side, and we're going to let all the traffic go through freely.
Y garantizamos, para presionar y ilustrar lo que nosotros queremos, un camino.
And we're going to guarantee free passage to make the demands that we're making have weight,
abierto donde abran paso y dejen de joder.
so that they'll open this free passage for the vehicles and stop jerking us around. The bulldozers are pushing over the barricades.
Nosotros también estábamos esperando que nos hablara el gobernador y el secretario de Hacienda y nos diga, oye, derríbenlo.
We were waiting for the tax commissioner and the governor of the state to call us and go, yeah, tear it down.
Nosotros entendemos que es un mal de toda la región.
We understand that this is a scourge on the whole region.
El bloqueo se prolongó hasta el atardecer y tendría como punto final la instalación de una manta para indicar que ahí el paso estaba libre.
The plan was that the destruction of this checkpoint was going to take place and end at the sundown, and that would conclude with a banner or a billboard being placed there that says that passage through this checkpoint is free, or there is no checkpoint, you can go through freely.
Pero con el acto principal cancelado, los participantes aseguraron que hubo presiones de por medio.
But with their principal act, the destruction of the checkpoint, being canceled, the participants related to the media that there was pressure that was placed upon them.
Mucha gente faltó porque los presidentes municipales no quieren estar peleados con el gobernador.
A lot of people didn't come today because the mayors, they don't want to get into a fight with the governors.
Si vienen, qué bien, y si nos apoyan, qué bien, y si no, pues yo me siento con derecho de que ellos nos apoyen.
Well, if they support us, great, and if they don't support us, that's fine too. We're doing what we have a right to do. We don't need their support.
Ya por la noche, la protesta terminó con la oferta del gobierno estatal de discutir.
At night, the protest ended with the offer of the state government to sit down
Esta semana, la reubicación de la garita.
and discuss moving the checkpoint to another location.
Con imágenes de Ahmed Velázquez desde Chihuahua para Milenio Noticias.
From Chihuahua for
Adriana
Millennial
Estela
News. So, folks, there is a long history, and you're about to listen to an interview in which Julian is asked about who could have massacred this family. There's a lot of speculation out there, and the investigations are going to last for a while, and the truth is, we may never know the truth. There's so much corruption in Mexico. The family of the LeBarons says as much. They don't trust in the investigations from the Mexican authorities, not at the state level, not at the federal level. They don't trust that they will be, that the investigations will not be tampered with because of the corruption in Mexico. And we know that there could be a number of answers to that question. Who could have committed this horrible atrocity against this family? And the answers are varied. There's a lot of pushback from the federal government to try to pin this on a particular cartel, or to say that it was a mistake, quote unquote, which I think is a horrible way to label this massacre. It was like, there's no way you can call this a mistake.
Yeah.
And it's not that simple. You can't just wash your hands of this incident without asking questions about who the enemies of this family are, what kinds of things happened in the not too distant past that might have set this off. One of those things could have been the battle over water, a fight for resources from a very prosperous Mormon family in the region versus the very humble and many times very poor ejidatarios, the land in common farmers in the surrounding areas. And so it was a Chihuahuense that posted this, a resident of Chihuahua that posted this comment talking about that history, about the water fights. In it, he says, let me be clear that I do not justify the comments of anybody that justifies these acts, or of the action or lack thereof of the federal government. I do criticize the actions of the state government, both in Sonora and in Chihuahua. They have had their hands in this problem, on this problem, since 2018. And the reason he says that is because this water fight between the Barzones, the ejidatarios, and the LeBaron family have been going on for a long time. And then he proceeds to give a history. I'm just going to quickly tell you what these are, and then, Duke, we're going to jump all the way to the LeBaron response video. So while you find that, I will let you know that the first video showing a fight between these Barzonista farmers and the LeBarones came out in December of 2017. Just for time's sake here, I'm going to run through the history without showing you each individual video. I can share all of them in the comments of this show, just in case so. Do you want to see them for yourselves?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Go check them out. But I will tell you that this fight that happened between the Barzonistas and the LeBarones became violent and involved burning of property and damages and fights and curse words and threats and people, being hurt. Then in April 30th of 2018, there was another shootout between Barzonistas. In May of the 2018, an incursion upon one of the ranches of the LeBaron families took place. And in this, Eric LeBaron videotaped, I think they had remote cameras installed somehow, because he said, we are not there at the ranch because it's too dangerous for us to be there in the video. But he says they're confiscating one of our motorcycles, and they are taking one of the generators that we use to pump water that we had hidden up in the mountains. And I was also looking on this Eric LeBaron's page, and I noticed the top post on his page is a cartoon from the San Diego Union Tribune, which I think he probably agrees with, in which it talks about, you just scrolled right past it, San Diego Union Tribune, in which it portrays in this cartoon cartel violence eating the country. And I'm sure for this family, it feels like that. But there are other issues, including the one about this water war that Eric's video of the incident on the LeBaron Ranch came from. And here, in another news piece, the Julian LeBaron responds to the attack that happened on the farm.
Miembros de los ejidos Constitución, San Lorenzo.
Members of the territories San Lorenzo, Constitution,
San Isidro, Benito Juárez,
y
Colonia Lerdo de Tejada, todos
and Colonia Lerdo de Tejada, all of them,
integrantes de El Barzón,
part of El Barzón, which is a municipality,
irrumpieron en un rancho propiedad de la familia LeBaron en el municipio.
Broke into a ranch owned by the LeBaron family in the municipality of
de Buenaventura.
Buenaventura.
Del lugar dispararon contra los manifestantes que allanaron la propiedad, lesionando.
Owners of the ranch shot upon the people that illegally entered their property,
A uno de los barzonistas.
Injuring one of the barzonistas.
Autoridades ya realizan las investigaciones.
Authorities are investigating.
La tranquilidad del rancho La Mojina en el ejido Constitución en Chihuahua.
The tranquility of the ranch by the name El Mojino, I think. Mojina were interrupted.
Propiedad de la familia LeBaron, migrantes
Property of the LeBaron family.
de Estados Unidos y miembros de una comunidad mormona.
United States citizens and members of the Mormon community.
Interrumpió la mañana del lunes, luego de que decenas de hombres y mujeres acompañadas de
The ranch was broken into on Monday morning after ranchers
niños pertenecientes al Barzón ingresaron
and families with children that were part of El Barzón municipality entered
con la consigna de hacer una inspección a los pozos
with the purpose of wanting to inspect the wells
de agua, los cuales aseguran que son ilegales.
on their farm, which they assured people were illegally dug.
Pero todo terminó en riña, destrozos y hasta disparos de arma
All of it ended in a battle with destruction of property, bullets,
de fuego por parte de integrantes
and fires being set by members of the people that came onto the ranch.
de los LeBaron, quienes dijeron defenderán su propiedad y su integridad respaldándose en sus derechos constitucionales.
And bullets shot by the LeBaron family, which said that they are going to protect their family.
Como ciudadanos mexicanos que ahora son.
And they're going to make their rights as Mexican citizens known.
Nosotros hemos dicho, bueno, pues si tienen elementos para comprobar que no.
Well, what we say is if they have the proof to show that
Lo que hemos hecho, para eso están los tribunales.
that we've done something wrong, that's what the courts are for.
Para eso está que vayan ustedes con las autoridades y que
That's what you need to do, is to go to the authorities
sus sus quejas en forma institucional.
And do things in an institutional way and bring your complaints.
Para que no nos orillemos a resolver nuestros problemas defendiéndonos por nuestra propia mano.
So we're not forced to take matters into our own hands and defend ourselves.
Ayer dicen que hubo balazos
Like happened yesterday.
de nosotros hacia ellos.
They say we shot at them.
Pero la parte que no cuentan es que nos robaron las camionetas y se
But the part that they don't tell you is that they stole our trucks. And they were
las están echando encima a las mujeres,
trying to run down women with those trucks.
a nuestros hermanos y a nuestra familia.
And our brothers and our family members.
Nosotros no podemos pedir permiso en ese momento para ver si podemos defendernos de personas
We can't ask for permission in those moments about whether or not we can defend ourselves
que nos están agrediendo.
when we're being aggressed upon. There's a truck running over trees, pecan trees.
Tomado por trabajadores e integrantes de los LeBaron.
This video was taken by workers and members of the LeBaron family
Quienes dicen recibieron amenazas desde hace 5 meses de parte
who say that they have been under threat for the last 5 months
de los barzonistas, quienes no han
by the Barzonistas who
logrado comprobar la ilegalidad de los 10 pozos de agua
have not yet proven or not been able to prove that these wells are illegal,
de los cuales Julián LeBaron asegura se tienen documentos y
and for which Julián LeBaron assures us that they do have proper documentation
solo se utiliza uno.
and that only one of the 11 wells are actually under use.
Como ustedes vieron ayer, como en el 82, nosotros no nos vamos a dejar. Nosotros
Like you saw yesterday and like you saw back in 82, we're not going to be sitting ducks.
trabajamos muy duro
We defend ourselves. We work too hard
por lo que tenemos.
for what we have.
Los barzonistas dicen que el uso de los pozos podría
And for their part, the Barzonistas argue that the wells being used
hacer que el agua de la región se agote,
is making the water in the region dry up.
además de que afecta sus cultivos.
And it's not just affecting their cultivations.
Aceptando que irrumpieron en propiedad privada, luego de que
They did accept that they went onto private property and broke into private property, and then afterwards they also took to the railroads.
la mañana de este martes tomaran
On
también
Tuesday.
las vías del tren de Villa Ahumada para llamar la
They blocked the Villa Ahumada railroads
atención de las autoridades.
to call attention to their plight and get the authorities to step in.
Efectivamente hubo ahí algunos destrozos que se hicieron
Yeah, there was some destruction that happened
por el coraje pues que de la misma multitud enardecida pues
because of, the climate of anger in the multitude of people that were there.
no iban a eso, pero pues finalmente así se dieron las cosas.
That's not what they were there to do, but in the end it's what ended up happening.
Pero no, pues finalmente son daños de carácter material.
But in the end it's all material damages only.
Los daños ascienden a poco más de $1 millón.
The damages ascend to over $1 million.
Los LeBaron dicen que defenderán sus tierras y a sus trabajadores que fueron amenazados
The LeBaron family says that they will protect their lands and their workers who they say were threatened
con mensajes. Por ello,
with messages like the one on screen that says, "You are informed that you have until 8 a.m. to get out of our town. Attentively, Ejido Construcción."
interpondrán una denuncia en la Procuraduría General de la República.
And they say that they will bring a complaint to the federal, at the federal level.
Yo no sé, pero son cientos y cientos de miles de dólares.
I don't know for sure, but it's hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars.
Seguro. Y mis hermanos aún siguen trabajando en Estados
For sure. And my brothers are still in the United States working
Unidos para poder hacerse de un patrimonio.
to have something to leave for the generations after us.
Porque nuestra familia es muy grande
Because we have a very large family,
y nosotros queremos regresar a México y,
and we would like to go back to Mexico,
y queremos ser productores y no
and we want to be producers.
No aceptamos que vengan y nos digan que no tenemos nosotros el derecho.
And we will not accept for people to come and tell us that we don't have the right
de producir y trabajar mientras otras personas que nos están agrediendo
to produce while other people that are aggressing upon us
quieren ser los únicos que producen en el estado.
want to be the only producers in the state.
Mientras tanto, la comunidad LeBaron busca
Meanwhile,
asegurarse en sus casas,
the LeBaron family is hunkering down in their homes
ya que temen que las autoridades no intervengan en defensa de la paz de la comunidad.
because they are afraid that the authorities will not intervene to keep the peace in their community.
Para imagen, Salvador Gómez.
For image, Salvador Gomez. So, Alex LeBaron, another member of the LeBaron family, was a part of the water regulation institute in Mexico called Conagua. And according to this article that I will share with you, again, it is in Spanish, but you can use the Google Translate and check it out for yourself. He was accused of giving 395 concessions for agriculture and water over to family members and prestanombres. Anybody knows what a prestanombre means? Here's a definition of prestanombres for those of you who don't know. And this is what it means. Prestanombres. A prestanombre or prestanombre appears to be a nominal owner or holder of a title to an asset, often land, who buys the asset on the instruction of another person using the true buyer's funds. The practice is, it is used in Mexico. It says in here in the definition, it may be used in Mexico. No, it is. It appears to be an under-the-table arrangement. At law, I suggest to you it is dangerous because it puts all of the incidents of ownership, such as possession, use, risk, and the right to alienate the property, in the hands of the prestanombre. In other words I saw used to describe the prestanombre include nominal owner and nominal holder, since the process appears to be completely illegal and entered into to circumvent the law. It is probably a completely unenforceable at-law arrangement because the principal person wanting ownership and the prestanombre unenforceable at-law arrangement between the principal person wanting ownership and the prestanombre buyer. And I think it's very important for you to know what that means as you look at this headline that tells you that Alex LeBaron, who's also an ex-legislator from the PRI party, was found to have given to family members and prestanombres, nominal owners. Have you found the article there, Duke?
This one?
Yes. 395 concessions to agricultural wells while he was a delegate at Conagua, the water regulation institution. And that's a picture of him. So something did happen there. And the fact is that the people in that community, both these farmers, ejidatarios, as well as the LeBarons, were saying, somebody step in. Someone of authority, could you please step in? Because somebody come investigate this stuff. And it appears that people just kind of kept their hands off of the whole thing. And the worst part of it is if you could go to the very bottom of the story, in which they found that he had done this. It shows that the worst part is he was denounced for giving out these wells, and also for, there was 2 agencies that were also mentioned in here, governmental agencies, one regulating electricity and another one regulating land use and wildlife, that kind of turned a blind eye and let these things happen. But there at the very bottom, you'll notice the number 900 and families right after it. What it says is that one family, the LeBaron family, was permitted to gain enrichment off of these clandestine deals, these illegal deals. And 900 other families had water shortages and had problems with the water on their farm.
Wow.
So that is another potential axe to grind that people have raised in the media that folks may have against this family. And when you're investigating a murder and a massacre, you have to kind of look at who are all of the possible enemies of this family that would want to hurt them, and for what reasons, what are their what motive would they have to do such a heinous thing. And of course, I don't think that violence solves anything in any situation. But what you have here looks like some kind of revenge killing. And this is just my opinion. Because I thought about it a lot. This, and I saw people commenting about this a lot. They kept saying, this looks like somebody wanted revenge. And we skipped over the announcement of Alex LeBaron quitting Conagua. But he did quit Conagua. Go back. There. And you'll see that it was announced that he quit his position at Conagua. So not only was it found that he did all of these concessions while he was at Conagua, he quit. All of this stuff came out afterwards. After he quit. Convenient, huh?
Yeah.
But there are a lot of discrepancies in how this investigation has been handled, is being handled by anyone's standard, by the LeBaron family standard, by the standards of Mexican citizens, by the standards of Americans looking in. They want to know why the response has been so slow. They want to know why this has been handled in such a shoddy manner. Why are people speaking out of turn? And in this heartbreaking interview, there's so much detail, folks, you cannot miss it. This is the most important part of the show that I have for you tonight. In Mr. Julian LeBaron's own words, you're going to get so much detail of what happened. You're going to hear things tonight in this interview you've never heard before, like the fact that this car was deliberately set on fire. In the American media so far, you may have heard a lot of people say, including members of the family, that the vehicle was ignited with a bullet that hit the gas tank. That is not what they believe now. They now believe that the vehicle was set ablaze after the family members inside, especially the driver, was killed, Ronita. And you're going to hear what the children relayed, the eyewitnesses that were there, about the massacre of Christina. And you're going to hear multiple vantage points of shooters from what they were able to learn from the crime scene. Lots of questions you may have had about how they left on this caravan, and all of these things will be answered in this interview. And one thing that really stood out to me is the repeated request or demand for the rights of the LeBaron families to defend themselves, to be able to arm themselves. In fact, in this interview, Julian LeBaron says, we are armed. They are not legally armed, but they said, yes, we're armed, and we will not accept anyone telling us we cannot be armed. We need to defend ourselves, even calling his family an army. Take a listen.
Sí, yo creo que no sé si hubo miedo o no sé si hay complicidad, pero
I don't know if people were afraid or if they're complicit.
La autoridad estatal del estado de Sonora y la autoridad estatal del estado de Chihuahua nunca llegaron a la escena.
But the authorities from the state of Chihuahua and the authorities from the state of Sonora never arrived on the scene. Were you told why they didn't arrive?
Porque estaba lejos, porque, no sé, digo, pretextos no faltan.
Because it was far, because, I don't know, they, never run out of excuses.
Así es como consideran este hecho.
Is this what you consider it, an excuse?
Pues es un crimen que no tiene nombre, que no podemos tolerar, es una agresión.
This is a crime that has no name, which we cannot tolerate.
A todas las familias en México, ¿qué tipo de hombres?
Nor could any family in Mexico. What type of men,
Sean delincuentes, atacan a mujeres y niños.
even if they're delinquents, attack women and children?
¿Cómo considera esta respuesta por parte de la autoridad? Y quizás
And how do you consider the response from the authorities?
sea una respuesta generalizada en todo México. No hay
Do you think it's a general response in all of Mexico
autoridad aparentemente.
From authorities?
Bueno, nosotros estamos exigiendo que se encuentren a los responsables y que sepamos exactamente quiénes son.
What we want from the authorities is that we know who did this,
Dónde viven y por qué lo hicieron.
where do they live, and why did they do this.
Es prima de nosotros, ella iba con sus 4 hijos.
This is our cousin. She was traveling with her 4 children.
Pues a LeBaron y iba por su esposo.
She was from LeBaron and she was going to pick up her husband.
Ir todos a una boda en estos días, este fin de semana.
All of them were going to go to a wedding this weekend.
Y ella iba con 4 niños chiquitos. Digo, tenía
She was traveling with 4 small children.
unos gemelos de pecho y otros 2
She had 2 little babies, breastfeeding babies,
niños. Y hasta donde entendemos y
and another 2 children as far as we know.
a las conclusiones a las que todos hemos llegado es que sabían exactamente que eran mujeres y niños.
And the conclusion that we've all reached is that they knew it was all women and children.
Y que así, siendo mujeres y niños, los agredieron.
And knowing they were women and children, they aggressed upon them.
Dispararon incontables veces, estaba lleno
They shot an untold amount of times. The place is riddled with bullets.
de balazos en la camioneta. Y después de haberlos baleado,
And the trucks are. And after shooting them up,
y de lejos, de arriba de un cerro y de cerca,
from up on a hill and from close by,
también, le prendieron fuego a la camioneta.
they lit the vehicle on fire.
Nosotros creemos que fue así porque
And we believe that that's how it happened because
pertenencias de Romita, su chequera y otras cosas que estaban
we found items belonging to Ronita, like her checkbook and other items from her purse that were
a 15 metros, donde
15 meters from the location.
seguro le agarraron la bolsa de adentro del vehículo
Surely they grabbed her purse from inside of her vehicle
después de que los habían baleado
after shooting them,
y después de eso le habían prendido fuego. Y desde
and then after they lit the car on fire.
su posición de donde estaban disparando arriba del cerro,
And from where they were shooting at the vehicles from up on that hill,
con la camioneta variada y todo lo que pasó, ellos sabían
with the vehicle all shot up and everything that they happened, they knew
que eran mujeres y niños.
that these
Tuvieron
were
que haber
women and
sabido.
children.
¿Algún pensamiento dónde pudiera venir este ataque? La comunidad
You have any sense of where this attack could have come from?
de LeBaron tiene enemigos así que, pues, realmente...
Does the LeBaron community have enemies like that?
No sé, yo no sé qué tipo de enemigos se enfoca a matar a mujeres y niños.
I don't know. I don't know what kind of an enemy focuses on murdering women and children.
Cosa que nosotros no entendemos cuál es la razón y por eso la exigencia.
We don't understand the reason for it, and that's why we're making demands.
Ya queremos saber quiénes fueron Y queremos saber por qué lo hicieron, porque
We want to know who they are, and we want to know why they did this.
esto es inexplicable para una persona que tiene pues una conciencia mínima.
This is inexplicable, even for a person that has the most minimal of conscience.
Esto podría derivarse de la actividad, porque sabemos que usted también es un activista, un luchador.
Would this bring you to take action because we know that you're also an activist?
Pues de derecho de los campesinos, de los agricultores, de la comunidad de LeBaron. Podría
For the people in the community, for the people of LeBaron, and for farmers.
Pues sí, eso no es una hipótesis que nosotros, yo no pienso que sea así, porque nosotros vivimos en Chihuahua, ni siquiera vivimos aquí. Entonces, ¿por qué agredir?
I mean, that's a hypothesis. I might have misheard what the question was about the town of LeBaron, but he says that's a hypothesis that we don't believe it because we live in Chihuahua. We don't even live here. So why would they come and target the people of this community?
LeBaron es una familia de más de 5,000 personas y todo.
LeBaron is a community of over 5,000 people. The family is our family is a family of over 5,000 people.
Vamos a estar exigiendo justicia.
And all of us are going to be demanding justice.
Hace un momento preguntaban cuestionar que si pudo deberse una equivocación debido al tipo de camionetas que
we were asking before if you think this could have been a mistake because of the type of SUVs, vehicles that were being driven. Because they were all in a caravan, and maybe the delinquents thought that it was a different group of people to, what's the word? Ambush them. I don't know what the mistake would have been. Because they knew it was women and children, and even though they knew, they went ahead and shot them. And then after shooting them, they lit fire to the car. And we're sure of that. So the mistake that is being talked about, I don't know what kind of mistake they're talking about.
Los dos vehículos de arriba de la sierra y el que está casi a la salida de la brecha, pues hay una distancia considerable.
The vehicle that's outside of this, I couldn't hear if he said the stretch or whatever, and the other one are at a distance, and Julian says 15 kilometers in difference.
¿Qué fue lo que pasó en ambos vehículos?
So what happened with the distance between the two vehicles? And
Ronita salió primero.
See, Ronita left first.
En la mañana para allá.
In the morning to go out there.
Antier.
The day before yesterday.
Ella se quedó variada en una Suburban negra.
She was in a black Suburban, and her car broke down.
Entonces, ella pidió apoyo.
So that's when she asked for help.
Mi prima Donna, que también iba para allá,
so my cousin Donna, who was also headed out there,
se la encontró.
Finds her.
Donna se trajo a Ronita.
Donna brings back Ronita.
Y vuelvo a insistir.
And I insist once again.
Camioneta de Donna había 7 niños.
In Donna's truck, she had 7 kids.
Subiendo y bajándose con niños y
with kids getting in and out of the vehicle.
Carriolas y todo lo que usted quiera de la
bringing in baby carriages and all the other stuff that's being taken in and out of vehicles.
Suburban negra hacia la camioneta de Donna.
From the black Suburban over to Donna's vehicle.
Los asesinos que estaban arriba del cerro
The assassins that were up on that hill
estaban viendo lo que estaba pasando.
were watching all of that happen.
Ellos vinieron aquí a La Mora,
So then they came back here to La Mora,
donde Ronita le pidió a su suegro que vive en
where Ronita asked her father-in-law, who lives in this house,
esta casa, présteme su camioneta porque la mía
lend me your vehicle because mine broke down.
se descompuso.
Fue la que quedó aquí al entrón.
And that's the one that's out here.
Ella se fue en la camioneta de su suegro Kenny Miller.
So she leaves then in her father-in-law's truck, Kenny Miller.
Y subiendo el cerro fue donde la agredieron.
And when she was going up the hill, that's where they attacked her.
El niño que iba a recoger la camioneta baleada
The kid that went out there to pick up the vehicle that was stranded
remolque fue el que vio el humo y habló
was the one that saw the smoke going up and called.
de la camioneta y le habló a su papá.
And he called his dad.
Pues Kenny llegó al sitio y de ese sitio me habló a mí y me dijo,
So Kenny goes out there
oye,
to the location and then calls me to say,
encontramos la camioneta baleada, están quemados mi nuera y sus hijos.
this car is shot out and my daughter-in-law and her children are incinerated. That's the grandfather's video that we saw all over the media.
Y hay otras dos familias que van en camino, están delante.
And there are another two families that are on this road that were ahead of her.
Y hace horas que no sabemos de ellos. Y es cuando nosotros hablamos con la
And it's been hours we don't know anything about them. And that's when we decided to call
Policía Federal en Chihuahua.
the federal police in
y le
Chihuahua.
pedimos ayuda al 35 del Batallón de Infantería en
And we asked for help from the infantry there
grandes para que ellos nos apoyen para venir a ver,
for
a ver
them
cómo
to help
podemos
us.
ayudar. Y cuando llegamos a Janos, el comandante Teófilo Gutiérrez
When we got to Janos, the commander, Teófilo,
de Chihuahua, de la Policía Federal, nos ofreció más refuerzos de la Policía Federal de Camino
offered us more federal police reinforcements
de Ciudad Juárez. Entonces ellos
from Ciudad Juárez.
llegaron junto con nosotros en Pancho Villa, que es ya entrando aquí.
They arrived at
Y es
Pancho
cuando
Villa.
a las 5 de la tarde más o menos también llega David, el esposo de mi prima Donna,
So then David arrived around 5, the husband of my cousin Donna,
a Pancho Villa, y es cuando llega la llamada del
Pancho
niño
Villa.
que se vino caminando, el hijo de Donna, a avisar aquí que habían sido asesinados su mamá y a Cristina.
and he comes back to advise that his mother had been killed, Christina.
Y es cuando dijimos nosotros tenemos que ir. Y yo personalmente
So that's when we had to all go. And personally,
con mi hermano estuvimos en la camioneta de enfrente porque la Policía Federal de Caminos no conoce las brechas.
we went ahead of them because the federal police, they don't know the roads here.
Y nosotros lo trajimos a la Policía Federal, imagínate. Nosotros la familia
So we had to kind of guide them. And just imagine us, the family members,
de los deudos, somos los primeros que llegamos a la escena del
that are the family of the victims. We're the first ones to arrive
crimen. Y
on the scene of the
yo
crime.
personalmente abrí la puerta y encontré a la bebé de Cristina que
And I personally opened the door of the vehicle and found Christina's baby still alive in the car.
aún estaba con vida. Y Cristina, los niños que fueron testigos que venían
And the children that were in that vehicle that were witnesses,
la camioneta de Donna atrás de Cristina, fueron testigos de que
that were in Donna's vehicle behind Christina were witnesses to the fact
Cristina se bajó de la camioneta y alzó las manos. Y ahí es donde le dispararon.
that Christina jumped out of her vehicle, raised her hands, and that's when they shot her.
Entonces, de que haya confusión y de que fuego cruzado es completamente falso.
So all these conclusions that it was crossfire between this and it's completely false.
Estos criminales que no tienen madre le abrieron fuego a mujeres y niños con premeditación.
These criminals who have no mother opened fire on women and children in a premeditated fashion.
Y con pues una brutalidad inimaginable
And with unimaginable brutality.
para un hombre. Yo no sé qué tipo de animales sean estos individuos.
I don't think they're men. I don't know what kind of animals these individuals are.
Ayer estuvieron aquí representantes del gobierno federal. Marcelo Ebrard.
Yesterday, the federal government representatives were here. Marcelo Ebrard said,
¿Alguien más ha tenido comunicación?
Nosotros
came. Has anyone else communicated with you?
no hemos tenido ninguna comunicación directa con Marcelo Ebrard. Creo
We have had no direct communication with Marcelo Ebrard.
que llegó a Bavispe y a lo mejor se vio con algunos miembros de la familia. No ha hablado con nosotros.
I don't know if he showed up to Bavispe and met with some members of our family there, but I would not know about it because he did not talk to me.
¿Algún otro funcionario del presidente mismo?
Tuvimos, yo tuve una
Was there any other functionary of the president that came to speak to you?
llamada ayer en la mañana de Alfonso Durazo.
I did receive a phone call yesterday in the morning from Alfonso Durazo.
Y me dijo, bueno, pues si hay algo que requieren, estamos a la orden. Y yo le dije que pues, toda la familia queremos saber exactamente quiénes fueron y por qué lo hicieron.
And he said that, you know, they're at our disposition if our families need anything. And I told him what we want is to know who these people are and why they did this.
Y no queremos que manipulen los datos y no queremos
And we don't want data to be manipulated.
que digan mentiras. Y en la mañanera de ayer,
And we don't want any lies to be told about what happened. And then, in yesterday's morning's press conference,
salieron a decir que estaban en un fuego cruzado. Y ni
they came out and they said that it was an accidental shooting because in a crossfire.
siquiera tienen los datos de qué fue lo que pasó.
And they don't even have the information about what really happened.
Nosotros, la familia, llegamos a la escena del crimen antes de que llegó la Fiscalía del Estado de Sonora, que ni las narices.
And we were the first ones on the scene of the crime before the states of Sonora's DA or people showed up, who never even, the DA never even showed his face.
Se asomó. Y la Fiscalía del Estado de Chihuahua igual. Digo, vivimos
Neither did the DA from the state of Chihuahua.
en una parte donde los criminales trampan a sus anchas y la autoridad no defiende ni a mujeres y niños.
Where the criminals are covered for in many ways, and the authorities do not defend women and children.
Aparentemente el gobierno mexicano no está haciendo mal.
Pues yo creo, y nosotros creemos como familia, de que la
Do you believe that the Mexican government is not doing right? Well, we believe, and our families believe,
libertad nos la da Dios, de que nuestra libertad viene desde que nacimos y es parte de nuestra herencia como ser.
that our liberty comes from God. From the moment that we are born free, and that is where our liberty comes from
Como seres humanos.
as human
Y
beings.
tenemos en todo momento el derecho de defender nuestra libertad. Y
And we also have the right to defend our freedom.
no podemos asumirnos como víctimas. No
And we cannot assume the role of victims here.
podemos asumir de que no tenemos la responsabilidad nosotros mismos de
We can't assume that we don't have the responsibility ourselves
defendernos cuando no lo estamos encontrando en otro lado.
to defend ourselves, especially when we can't find that from anyone else.
Y ninguna autoridad tiene, ninguna autoridad puede ser legítima de decirte, oye,
And no authority has, no authority can be legitimate
pues yo estoy aquí para protegerte, no te protejo, pero te
saying that they're supposed to be there to protect you, but they don't protect you.
prohíbo los medios para que tú te defiendas y te protejas.
And on top of that, they prohibit for you to take up whatever measures you need to protect yourself.
Nosotros no aceptamos ese tipo de estupideces.
We do not accept that kind of stupidity.
Es decir, ¿estarían dispuestos ustedes a armarse, tener armas de fuego, la posición de armas de fuego?
Definitivamente, definitivamente.
So you're going to arm yourselves and take things in? Definitely. We definitely will.
Yo pienso que esta idea de que ellos tienen un monopolio en la seguridad y la justicia.
We believe that this idea that they have a monopoly on security and justice,
Pero no te defienden ni te protejan y que tú no tienes el derecho.
but they don't protect you and they don't defend you, and then they also tell you you don't have a right to.
Siendo que ellos reclaman que nosotros mismos les dimos la autoridad para que nos
When we are the ones that gave them the authority
defiendan y nos protejan y nos dejan en la
to defend us and protect us, and they leave us
indefensión y nos vienen con la estupidez de que nosotros no tenemos el derecho de
with no attention, and then they come and tell us that we don't have the right
defendernos, no lo aceptamos de
to
ninguna
defend ourselves. Well, we don't accept that.
autoridad. Es una autoridad que te obliga a estar indefenso cuando no te
We don't accept that from any authority, an authority that obligates you to be defenseless.
puede defender. Es una autoridad criminal. Es
That's a criminal authority that tells you that.
más cómplice de los delincuentes que los
They're accomplices of the delinquents,
que nos quedamos de rodillas y siempre nos asumimos como las víctimas
and they put us on our knees as the victims.
de las circunstancias.
¿Qué piensa hacer la familia
In
de
this
LeBaron,
circumstance.
la comunidad de LeBaron, alguna vez que terminen los funerales para exigir esa justicia que está reclamando? ¿Qué más actividades piensan hacer?
Pues mira, desde esta
After the burials take place, what will your family do?
mañana ha entrado un espíritu de sobriedad y de dolor
This morning, a spirit has overtaken us of somberness and pain,
impensable en toda la familia por lo que ha acontecido.
unimaginable pain for what has occurred to our family.
Vamos a esperar a tener los funerales y yo creo que pues, somos una familia muy grande, hay más de 5
And we're going to wait for the funerals to be over, and we are a very large family. We are a family of over 5,000.
familia varones y cuando nos tocan a uno de nosotros, pues obviamente están atacando un ejército de familiares.
When they touch one of us, they are attacking an army of family members.
Y nosotros no vamos a admitir que esto quede en la impunidad. Creemos que
And we're not going to let things stay like this, with impunity.
para que haya un camino a la justicia, primero tenemos que llegar al camino de la verdad.
In order for us to reach the road of justice, first we have to get on the road of truth.
Queremos saber exactamente quiénes fueron los responsables de estas atrocidades.
We need to know exactly who did this, those responsible for these atrocities.
Queremos saber exactamente por qué lo hicieron. Y después de eso, podemos irnos a quién los encubre. ¿Por qué
We would like to know why they did it, and then after that, we need to know who's covering for them.
no llegó la Fiscalía del Estado?
Why didn't the DA for the states arrive?
¿Por qué estas personas pueden operar con impunidad en todos
How can they operate within our state with impunity?
lados? Y yo creo que tenemos que empezar con llamar a cuentas a los que dispararon.
But we have to start with holding accountable those who shot.
Y yo creo que ese es el camino para empezar a poner orden en todos lados. Yo creo que es la tarea
I think that's how we start putting order in every location.
de millones de mexicanos, porque últimamente, si vivimos con casi el 100%
And that's the what we all live as Mexicans everywhere, because
de impunidad en el país, es
over 11 million Mexicans live under complete impunity.
porque millones de personas hemos sido apáticos y hemos
11 million Mexicans have been apathetic,
sido cobardes al grado de permitirle a la autoridad
and we have been cowards to the degree that we permit the authorities
tener poder sobre nosotros cuando ni siquiera nos puede defender la vida.
to have a power over us when they can't even defend our lives.
Yo vi un video del gobernador del estado manifestando
I could not hear what the question was, but he's responding. I saw the governor of the state responding
dando sus condolencias y su
sending his condolences,
solidaridad, pero no hemos visto ni las narices del Estado.
and saying that he stood in solidarity with us, but we haven't even seen his nose.
El gobierno del Estado de Chihuahua en el sentido de un apoyo.
From this governor of Chihuahua in terms of his quote-unquote support.
¿Acaso le sostuvo usted la tesis de que fue un fuego cruzado?
No, eso lo escuchamos después en los medios. Y él ofreció ayudarnos a capturar a los responsables y que se haga la justicia. Pero aparte de eso...
It was something about whether or not this was a crossfire, between two cartels firing on each other type of an accident thing. He said, no, we heard about that later in the media.
Eso, pues no tenemos más datos.
We have no more data on that, he said.
Yo no he tenido ninguna comunicación con ellos, pero somos una familia enorme. Tal vez otras personas de aquí que viven en Sonora, pues sí han tenido más comunicación, pero nosotros...
They're asking him about different authorities in different states, and he says, look, we're a large family. I don't have any more information on that. Maybe they spoke to other members of our family in the state of Sonora, but I don't know about it.
Yo, en lo personal, no he hablado con ellos.
But he hasn't personally talked to these people.
Están en un hospital en Arizona. Uno, pues le pegaron aquí en la boca, en la quijada.
The children were asked about those that survived, and he said they were in a hospital in Arizona. One of them was shot in the jaw.
Y la bebé de pecho, le pegaron en el pecho, le rozaron el pecho.
The breastfeeding aged child was hit in the chest with a bullet. It grazed her chest.
Y pues estaba gravemente herida. Y creo que una niña tiene un
She was gravely injured. Another child was shot in the foot.
balazo en un pie. Y la niña que encontramos deambulando, que es una niña de 9 años, se llama Mackenzie.
And the girl that we found walking, who is a 9-year-old by the name of Mackenzie,
Pues tenía lleno de ampollas en los pies de tanto que caminó. Y también estaba herida de bala.
she had blisters all over her feet from walking for so long, and she was also shot.
Y pues gracias a Dios ellos ahorita están fuera de peligro al parecer y se están recuperando.
But thank God they're all out of danger now, and they are recuperating.
Hace un momento comentaba, escuché que las autoridades ahí...
Nosotros no los esperamos en la escena de Nona. Nosotros le dijimos a la autoridad, mira, estos cuerpos no...
Look, I'll tell you, we did not wait. We didn't continue to wait at the crime scene in Donna.
No lo vamos a dejar aquí por un minuto más.
We decided. We said, we're not leaving the bodies here for one more minute.
Los recogimos junto con alguna autoridad del estado de Sonora, que ya que estábamos
With some of the authorities from the state of Sonora,
ahí arriba, sí
who had been waiting with us up there for hours.
llegaron algunas personas locales
There was some local authorities that were there
de aquí de Sonora.
from Sonora.
Ellos hablaron y se coordinó, pero fuimos los cuerpos, nosotros aquí los trajimos a sus casas.
And so they helped us, they coordinated with us, but we picked up all the bodies and we brought them home.
No los tiene. No
So the authorities don't have the bodies, and no, he says.
permitimos ni la autopsia.
No, we didn't permit them to take the bodies or to do perform autopsies.
No le permitimos que lo llevaran. Exacto. Pues no sé si haya más mensaje que queremos saber quiénes son y queremos llevarlos ante la
I don't know what other message there could be. We just want to know who they were.
justicia. Y yo creo que también tenemos un mensaje para los millones de mexicanos. Yo creo que lo que hemos hecho hasta ahorita para enfrentar el problema del crimen y la violencia no nos ha funcionado.
And we also have a message for the Mexican people. I think what we've done up to now to fight against crime, it hasn't worked.
Yo creo que es tiempo de dejar de pensar que participar en las elecciones cada 6 años es lo único que tenemos que hacer.
And I think we have to stop thinking that participating every 6 years in election and voting for, in elections is a solution.
Y que de cierta manera milagrosamente se van a resolver todos nuestros problemas.
And that somehow, by doing that, our problems are going to be resolved miraculously.
Yo creo que tenemos que activamente empezar a unirnos en vez de dividirnos en partidos políticos.
We have to actively unite instead of dividing ourselves into different political parties.
Y todas estas estupideces que se hacen en las elecciones.
And all the stupidities that take place during elections.
Y poder empezar a resolver nuestros problemas desde la sociedad civil.
And start resolving our problems within civil society. So, what we know from this interview is that it has raised more questions than it answers. Not only about the deaths, but also about the investigations, federal government, and the insecurity that reigns in Mexico because of the corruption that is so rampant. And amidst all of this, the President of the United States, Donald Trump, has extended his support to the Mexican president, saying they are willing to send in the military, eradicate cartels from Mexico, and even considering classifying cartels as terrorist groups. And while everyone, both in Mexico and the United States, agree that corruption and organized crime in Mexico need to be quelled, how we go about that is a delicate dance. Understanding the politics, understanding the history of the situation with cartels and organized crime in Mexico is crucial to understanding the best way to dismantle this ticking time bomb. And let me just tell you that an all-out war against the cartels has already been tried under President Felipe Calderón, which netted more deaths than both the Iraq and Afghanistan wars combined. And even Julian, who you just heard being interviewed, said in an interview himself that he did not appreciate the response against cartels by the president of Mexico, Felipe Calderón, because all it did was to create more death and more violence in the country. He even defended those who grow and sell drugs, saying, I see no difference between someone that sells tobacco and someone that sells marijuana. He said that he felt that those who waged war against the cartels and organized crime, like President Calderón did at the time, and in response to his activism on behalf of victims of organized crime at the time, with that national organization I told you he was traveling around with. He said that the response from that president was irresponsible because it did not take into account the roots of why cartels exist and why organized crime thrives in Mexico. And maybe these are all questions that could be answered with regard to how organized crime is dealt with in Mexico. But will that fix the problem of the attacks on this particular family, on the LeBaron community? That remains to be seen. But there are a lot of questions about what happened in this investigation, in this crime, in this heinous crime against women and children. A crime that, like Julian LeBaron said, has no name and for which there is no excuse. And we will continue to dig deeper into the questions surrounding this massacre, the LeBaron family, the possible motives, and the politics behind how we deal with organized crime in Mexico in our upcoming shows here on A Mexican Crossing Lines with your hosts, Cindy Gomez-Schempp
and Duke Gomez-Schempp.
You've been listening to 88.1 FM, KPPPLP Fargo Moorhead, where we are adding local color to your airwaves. Thank you for being with us, and good night.
Thank you.